feedback they're already getting as they sort of drag their hand through space, they see a confirmation of what they intended to do, and that helps them be more fluent. So this is the hypothesis that we would love to dig into in more depth in order to explain this effect. Also, we saw with our findings that the younger the children, at least up down to age 10 was the youngest we included in this study, the more the absence of visual feedback affected their gestures. And so that's sort of how we rounded up, once you consider all 9 of the features that we looked at, to recommend to include visual feedback during surface gesture interaction wherever possible. But I was talking about how this was all sort of motivated on the idea of being able to recognize their gestures and interpret them better. So do any of those features have an impact on recognition? And it turned out that when we ran the gestures we collected through the $N recognizer, it's actually a recognizer that I've developed for adults' gestures, which we might expect to be affected by these features because of how the recognizer uses geometry to recognize, differentiate between different gestures. We actually see that there is no difference in recognition accuracy based on visual feedback alone. We do still see supporting prior work that there's a significant main effect of participant age group. So still, kids' gestures tend to be less well recognized than adults, and that's even correlated with age. As I mentioned before, the younger the kid, the worse the recognition. However, we don't find support for the hypothesis that the accuracy would be lower dependent on the presence or absence of visual feedback. So we wonder, what does this mean? It could be due to a lack of correlation between those features, even though we hypothesized that they would be related to recognition, maybe they weren't as related. It's not like the recognizer specifically uses those features, but it characterizes gestures in a way that we thought would be affected by it. But we actually have some new work, hopefully coming out soon, that finds other recognizers besides $N do have trouble with gestures collected in the absence of visual feedback, so stay tuned for that. But in the short term, what we saw was that all of this work is just aiming to characterize the input behaviors we will see from kids so that we can develop technology to correctly interpret their intent. And so far, we see differences in their feedback, but it doesn't necessarily affect our ability to recognize their intent. Although for younger kids, we're not doing a good job of that anyway, so maybe we still need to work on that piece. So to bring it back around, what is our conclusion? Why do we recommend visual feedback? Well, this boils down to the qualitative observations we made